right, I think we are live. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody.
Yeah, hey.
It's good to be back.
Hey,
Today we're joined by one of our friends, Dave, better known as, I guess, Unsupervised Darkness on Instagram. Good to have you
howdy.
here with us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
And if anybody's been like watching our streams for a little while, probably will remember Dave's been in the audience for a while now too. So now he's on talking to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Glad
true.
to have you here,
Yeah,
Dave.
yeah. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Um, I'm actually following this on Twitch. I'm on Twitch, using Twitch.
It hasn't shown up on YouTube for me yet.
Uh,
Really? Hmm.
I'm sure it will eventually.
Let me
Oh,
see.
it's happening.
Good
It's
Lord.
it's
it's happening.
yeah, it's here now. I don't know why it wasn't showing up, but yeah, it's here. It's
Yeah,
here.
there's Adam.
Perfect. Well, I guess the thing we wanted to start the stream with today was a pretty great GIF that Jake from Exprofundus posted, urging people to stay at home.
Oops, I gotta do something.
um,
Yeah, now with the little wait, Corvus Lander or I don't remember what they're called.
yeah, I'm not actually sure what it's called. They're great. But yeah, so things here in the United States have been pretty interesting with the
The
pandemic and
coronavirus
all.
pandemic,
Yeah.
and I'm sure everywhere too,
Yeah.
not just here, of course, because, well, yeah,
It's a pandemic.
yeah.
Yeah, well, because I mean, I guess admittedly, last uh, week the stream I think was just right before Adepticon was canceled and all
Right.
that sort of stuff, and when the United States started to actually take things seriously, and it has kind of really escalated dramatically since then.
It certainly has. Hey, Lifeboat.
Yeah, nah, because it's
Well, I feel like the whole situation has slowly been escalating in the United States. It's just the United States decided to care about it very rapidly only recently.
yeah, yeah.
It would be foolish to think that only now, all of a sudden, it's a problem.
Yeah, nah, it's true.
Okay, Eli. Nice to have you here as well. Hopefully all is
Hey, bye.
well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, but it's interesting now. Well, that so like Adepticon's been canceled, and I feel like that has to be a pretty big blow to a lot of the smaller businesses and things that were gonna be going to Adepticon and trying to sell things or try to get their name out there, that sort of thing. Whereas like Games Workshop, like it hardly matters. Now they don't have to spend the money to send people over here. They already have their like Warhammer community page and things like that that they can easily convey new releases and previews and all that stuff. Like I don't think it will hurt them dramatically in the short term. I suppose though, just depending on how long this goes, like I could see there kind of being a global recession and that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
I guess that will probably hurt Games Workshop because as much as we love our miniatures and this and that, like they are essentially just like toys and such.
Yeah, for most of
That,
they're for most of us a hobby. We're not, or at least we're
yeah,
certainly not making a living off of any of this, which is probably good. As
yeah,
much as I would like that, um,
Yeah, we're making no money on this. We're just sinking money into
Yeah, we're
it.
just spending money on it.
Yeah.
I've been trying not to make money on it. I mean, not that I have tried to, but just in the sense of there's so many people monetizing the hobby that it's hard to not think about the possibility of doing commissions or.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
feel certainly for me, just how I go about everything, I'm pretty slow and methodical about it. Like I think trying to monetize it might take something away from it, and like the time that I do have with it is sort of limited. So, I feel with commissions and stuff, like I remember every so often I would get like comments and requests to like do commissions to make certain things like Dark Eldar Trueborn and stuff based on some of my initial conversions, and it's just like I don't think I really want to just like remake something, because that sort of takes away a lot of kind of the exploration and like fun of all of that.
And it would take so much time and effort to do that. Like you would have to dramatically undervalue or under monetize your skills to like get anyone to sort of accept the cost.
That's probably
So,
true too.
Yeah, right.
Oh, and hey, Meandering Shade, nice to have you here too. But in that sense, like we've also kind of actively been avoiding trying to monetize stuff. Like in that sense, like we all have kind of jobs or careers, that sort of thing, that this is squarely kind of a hobby. And I mean, certainly we put a lot of effort into it in the sense that we, have a blog, we stream and have a podcast, like all those things. Like it is a large effort, but it's still something that we do for, just to have fun and connect with people. So
I think
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think most of the time when you like try to maybe make a business out of something you love, it probably takes a little bit of that away from it. Like thinking about like, oh, wouldn't it be so great to own a shop that sold board games and hobby stuff? Well, probably very quickly into trying to do that business venture, you would realize that you no longer have the time to enjoy any of those things, and you're just worrying about how you don't have the money to buy all the product you need, and then don't have the product you really should have to sell, and aren't making enough money to pay for overhead costs.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't want to own a hobby business.
well, and particularly now,
Ugh.
like
Yeah.
owning any business would be kind of terrible.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, it's with the lockdown that we're having now, it's like every hobby shop in the like 30-mile radius is closed till the 7th of April.
Mm-hmm. The stuff here that hasn't necessarily happened, but I suspect the main one that I would go to, games and stuff, they have a big game room in the back, but they've closed all that and have issued various precautions and this and that. But honestly, with how the rate of confirmed cases is increasing, I assume that'll probably change soon too.
Yeah. Yeah. Almost certainly. I feel also, in terms of like as soon as you try and monetize stuff, that'll also then sort of give you other like
Obligations.
obligations and like timelines to do stuff. Like for our like blog and stream and all that stuff, like we have a lot of like internal goals and stuff that we try and do like on a monthly basis and stuff, but ultimately those are really only just goals that we know about and think about. So it's not like if for whatever reason we wouldn't accomplish them, it doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
Hey
Well,
Johnny, nice to see you here tonight too.
And yeah, it's kind of with that, like, if you'd start like a Patreon or something, which I feel a lot of people have kind of started to do in this hobby if they have a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatnot. And like I feel that would be just another one of those things like you'd feel obligated to like have rewards or do this and that. And like if we would do something like that, we'd have to put dumb shit like, oh, like, and if you back our Patreon, you can get access to our exclusive Discord server. We do have a Discord
yeah,
server
that Discord
like
server.
literally no one is on.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
bad. It's
Uh,
bad.
Like I post a picture every now and again of something I'm painting or whatever, but like it is literally nothing. But yeah, so like I don't.
So yeah, those of you that are using the Discords, get on the Between the Vulture and Me Discord channel for no content.
Yeah.
Yep, that's where it's at.
No, but I guess saying all that, I think Patreon could work well depending on what you're trying to achieve with it, and if you literally did have like costs or whatever that you needed to somehow like maintain to continue whatever it was you were doing, maybe, but at least in our sense, not
Well,
really.
for
Yeah,
the three
it's
of
a
us,
good
like
thing.
there are 3 people to help funnel money into buying models for Adam to use. So
Eric
it
too.
helps.
You should
Yeah,
start making stuff, Greg.
Yeah, I should try. Maybe I might try to assemble a Gundam model kit or something.
That would be
We'll
cool.
see. We'll see.
That would be cool. Well, I guess maybe do we want to talk a little bit about like what we're working on or something before we maybe move into kind of some of our like main talking points, etc.
Yeah, no, we can certainly do that.
What are you working on, Dave?
Working on a few things. The Bone Reaper, I put a few coats of paint on that.
Yeah, I just brought that up from your
cool.
Instagram account. Now he's looking
Yeah.
cool.
Oh,
I really
thanks.
like that, like the reds and like kind of like the purples. I think kind of work together really well.
Yeah, I've been trying to just experiment with using purple or deep, blood reds for
Hmm.
base colors for flesh and things like that. So even though he's kind of more of a bone creature, I was thinking, that would be a cool shadow color, and then just
Mhm.
go in and lick in some highlights of some lighter bone shades, and the contrast between the two, I think, will be really cool.
No, he looks great. I always sort of really love painting red. That was what is one of my favorites.
The last time I painted models, which was like 3 years ago, probably, I painted a red model and I liked it. I
Yeah,
like
nah, red's fun to paint. Like that's why I'm painting these. This is a battle that color.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You also looks like you've been painting a bunch of stuff from the Hate board game.
Sure. Yeah, it's the first thing that I the first game that I bought that I was kind of turned on to Kickstarter and all that was the Hellboy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Mantic
Hell-
games.
Yeah, big Hellboy fan. So I was like, of course, just buying it for the miniatures, and
Yeah.
they're so great. And then a buddy
Is
of
it
mine just
Hellboy like primarily the comics or?
yeah,
excellent.
started in the comics for sure, and then the movies came out, and those were always kind of semi disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the particularly then. Or I guess I shouldn't speak. I didn't really watch the new one, but it didn't look exciting.
I'm still thrilled with the illusion of movement, so I'm pretty easy on movies.
Mhm.
I
But,
feel yeah. But I mean,
It
I
sounds
love his
okay.
comics and Mignola's all his stuff, all the BPRD stuff, and like, yeah, all his Hellboy stuff and all the coloring. And actually, who did the? Was it Dave
Dave Stevens.
Stewart or Dave? Okay, yeah,
Is
but
it-
like
I think it's Dave Stevens,
Stevens,
Oh, is
yeah,
it?
yeah. But
not the
regardless,
not the
his
artist, that did Rocketeer.
but like all that stuff, like I feel the art style and the coloring and stuff all works together so seamlessly and creates like just wonderful like imagery that kind of just sparks your imagination.
Certainly.
Dark Horse's website says his name is Dave Stewart.
Dave Stewart.
If we're talking about the guy who colors like all
the
of
colors. Dave
Mignola's
Stewart.
work,
Yeah.
yeah, it's Stewart.
Yeah,
It's been a while since I read any of like I mean I get honestly probably the last stuff I really read was Hellboy in Hell, which has been a little while now.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But yeah, well,
I guess I can show you. I haven't been able to do as much painting as I had wanted to, but I started kind of playing around with painting the base to the Eldar model, and for that I've been using some of those like Artist Opus dry brushing brushes. They're kind of fun. They work pretty well. They're certainly a very different way to go about painting and dry brushing, and I need to experiment a lot more with it. But they're a good way to kind of experiment with like getting like texture and stuff into like what you're painting pretty easily. So they've been fun.
Tell me something about these artists. I remember when you bought them, but describe them to me.
Let me bring up their website. See if Explore Series D. They're the brushes themselves, like the head of the brush is kind of almost like a light bulb shape, and that kind of allows you to.
they're basically makeup brushes, to be honest.
Yeah. When they've experimented around with the bristles and all that stuff, but they allow you to kind of apply the paint in kind of a way that, like, if you're good at it, you can get really nice and subtle color transitions and stuff, such that it might even look like you airbrushed the stuff. But they work well for like painting like larger surfaces and kind of adding like subtle variations and like texture to stuff that can be pretty hard to achieve with like a brush unless you're willing to spend a lot of time with it. And one of the other things that's interesting about it, they have a bunch of nice videos and stuff online about how to use them, but they have like a little foam pad that you are to add like a drop or two of water to, and like once you've been using the brush to like pad on the paint kind of, you can then go back and dab your brush on that little pad to add just a tiny amount of moisture to the brush, and then you can then go back and continue to apply the paint, and that kind of allows you to get essentially more out of whatever you put on your brush.
And I think it helps it blend a little bit better and whatnot.
Yeah. But yeah, like I don't know, I'm pretty happy with the effect that I've achieved on it, but I don't know, I'll probably go back and rework it a little.
Because when I was painting my Mordheim, like wraiths and stuff, I just bought like a pair of like, I don't know, $8 makeup brushes, which are kind of similar, and tried to do the same thing, and it kind of worked out okay. But I
Yeah.
guess unlike otherwise kind of traditional brushes that people use for dry brushing, like you just try to get most of the paint off and run it over them and kind of just brush at them. But these you can almost like just sort of like, I don't know, poke the models with them, like, and it's interesting. But they're fun, and like I haven't used the artist opus ones much at all, but I feel it'll be interesting to experiment with. But I feel kind of like with almost anything, like any technique or whatever, like if you try to do it, you can learn something from it and take away something from it. So like, I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah.
Adam, did you put down a texture? I know that's a Necromunda base, but the texture on the flat areas is cool.
That was all created with just the paint. There was no texture beforehand. Um, so, and apparently, how they've recommended it, like say if you sprayed or primed the thing black, they often recommend you go and for your initial thing is just use one of the brushes and kind of dry brush all over it with just your black paint, and that will sort of start to create some subtle variations of like height and texture on the base. And then as you continue to go through with different colors and stuff, you kind of build on that and can kind of create like, so here it almost to me looks almost more like a concrete type rough effect to it. And if I go back and spend some more time with it, I could probably get more of a subtle transition of color, or like now it looks pretty rough. I mean, obviously here we're looking at it at an extremely magnified state, so this kind of looks a little different than what you would actually see if you were looking at it in person because it's much smaller. But they're cool. Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's what I've been working on. I'm hoping I will actually get to painting the Eldar model itself pretty soon as well. Eric, you've been working on painting like another Sister of Battle, correct? Yeah, here, I just brought up a picture of the model. Is Eric gone? Eric might be gone. Oh, he's back.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, Eric, you've been working on painting a Sister of Battle, right?
Yeah, no, I have. Yeah, so this is just the second Sister of Battle that I started to work on after finishing kind of the first one with the bolter. And since Johns Hopkins is largely shut down, I've had more time to paint. So
Making use
this
of
is
that
the
extra
second.
time.
Yeah. So I've been trying to finish, and this one's pretty far along, other than I have to paint the weapons and do some other additional things. But like, it's been fun, and like the red, or at least a lot of it, was primarily painted just using contrast paints. So, but I guess I found to get them to look okay, like you kind of have to, like I applied for the red armor, like one layer, like a thinned layer of it, let it dry, then applied it again.
Okay.
Like if you try to put it all in just like one thick coat at once, like it doesn't
Doesn't work right.
it often doesn't work that well, or doesn't really look like quite what you want.
Okay.
And then I kind of went in and glazed some areas to make it darker and did some edge highlighting and stuff as well. So like I feel if you want it to actually look good or kind of good, like I think you kind of do have to go in and do the normal painting things, like miniature painting things.
Mm-hmm.
Like it helps a lot. But so yes, I'm pleased that I've made some progress on it, and hopefully within the next few days here I can finish her and maybe even go on to another one. I
That's
don't
what you
know.
have to do.
Yeah, if I feel I need to like push through it and try to like if I could finish like all 5 of them, like that would be great.
That's what your goal should really be, because as soon as you stop, like you're
It will
probably
never
never
happen.
going back.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Could use them as like a kill team or something. Who knows? Actually,
Yeah.
question for you. On the front of her like armor, it almost looks like there's that like I'm just gonna call that a zipper or whatever. Are you gonna paint that silver or just leave that red?
I mean, I could paint it silver.
I sort
I
of
think-
feel like I'd paint it silver.
Yeah, I could do that.
Not that it really matters. Like I don't know what that's supposed to be.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, I mean, I could certainly paint it silver.
You should also put a lot of blood on the chainsaw, Eric. That'd be so cool.
Obviously.
I probably wouldn't do that, but if you do, less is more. Less is more.
More is always more, Adam.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
something that I've learned. The little that I paint, like add like blood effects and stuff on models, it often looks a lot better if you don't go overboard.
Yeah.
But yeah, that bolter she's carrying is too big, Eric. You should have done something.
I know. It looks terrible. Well, that's why I want to try to just push through them and finish them. Like, I don't have to spend that much time on them because, like, they don't look like as good as they could. So it's just like whatever.
I almost feel like for
Fine.
this model, what's more egregious is the chainsword.
Well, we don't need to get into our dislike of.
Or maybe it's how she
GW.
has her foot up on that's the stone. Love that.
Oh,
love
it was
it.
cool.
Well, yeah, whatever. We don't need to complain about that anymore. Everyone's
Yeah.
heard it before, probably a lot.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So what's the thought? Maybe we.
Somebody in the YouTube chat just posted a racial slur. So whoever is in there, if maybe it's a bot, but it's probably not a bot. Whoever it is, get the fuck off of here.
Yeah.
There's no place here for that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's through YouTube
It's
or.
through YouTube. I am
Yeah.
in the process
Oh,
of
yeah.
reporting all of the instances as hate speech.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. Well, with that, yeah, because I mean, I feel that's a good aspect of I feel the miniature wargaming community. By and large, I feel most of the people in it are pretty accepting and like it's a good, welcoming community.
Yeah, at least the people we've surrounded ourselves with.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Well, so what's the thought? Maybe we could potentially kind of move into the podcast section of the stream and like kind of try and focus our attention and conversations a little more. What are people thinking?
Let's wait a little bit and maybe type some stuff into this chat to get the racial slur out of there. Because
That's
I
a good
feel like
idea.
we could even edit this afterwards to not have it.
That would be better. That would be better.
Yeah, well, and I mean potentially even before going into the podcast thing here, and we sort of mentioned when we started out there was the picture of the little lander for Aeronautica Imperialis, like, and I think they also revealed another Tau battleship or the Tiger Shark, which I think was that gigantic Forge World
Oh yeah, it's
40K
really expensive.
model. Yeah, but now there's going to be a small plastic version of it, which admittedly, even the little lander, there's like Forge World has one of it that since it's Forge World and it's an older model, like none of the pieces fit together.
Yeah,
But
it's a
just like
nightmare.
most of Adeptus Titanicus and Aeronautica Imperialis, both of which are kind of cool games that allow you to kind of own various cool Forge World models without actually having to go through the terrible process of assembling a large resin model.
And some of these are the models that some of these represent were from pretty early in Forge World days, so like the quality control and just the molds in general are not really what they are today, to say the least. Um, and I mean, even stuff like the Warhound Titans and stuff that they released, like they're kind of a nightmare to like assemble or do anything with. And I feel like you almost, if you have them, you either are going to decide for yourself that you're going to spend a lot of time and like resculpt a lot of stuff, or you're just going to largely glue it together and say, most people won't see all the stuff that's wrong with it. It's good enough. Those are the two options,
Yeah,
really.
which admittedly, with the little that lander, I have one of the Forge World ones in my
Mm-hmm.
apartment here. Like I've been meaning now that I've started to use or milliput
Milliput.
and such rather than just green stuff. I've been kind of meaning to go back to it and try to assemble it because like all the huge gaps and stuff I think would be substantially easier to fill and like make look okay with milliput since I could sand it and do all that.
I've
Yeah.
got a, not to change the subject or anything. I got a buddy of mine in the room, Yuan.
Oh. Oh,
Oh,
great.
hey.
Oh, nice
He,
to have you here.
he's just getting into miniature painting himself,
Oh, that's
and
fun.
he's doing a lot of 3D printing and then painting them up. So
Oh, that's
I feel
great. I
like
feel that would be fun to
3D printing of stuff that like he has like designed and stuff
I'm
with
not sure.
like
You might want to speak up on the chat about it, but I think I think they're he's downloading it.
yeah, I
yeah,
mean
so I
there's
know
probably
like if
plenty of
I don't
things.
really know I know very little about it, but I think like if you can get some of the like files and stuff, like there are a lot of people with the know-how that can like design
we and I
stuff.
think there are a bunch of like Kickstarters and different companies and such that like you can just spend money to like buy particular designs so you can print them and whatnot. So like I feel there's tons of opportunities there just to like get stuff, experiment with printing, and kind of learn
Mhm.
whatever printer you have, and like to get better prints. And then I mean, I still think it could be fun to eventually like start to try to work with stuff like ZBrush or any of those sorts of digital sculpting software and to create stuff. But I feel like that's just increased in popularity dramatically.
MyNewFactory.com. I wasn't aware of this.
I feel I've looked at their stuff before, but I've not really.
It seems like a cool way, like to if you have that, like you can just print out lots like different things and just experiment with painting and whatnot, and maybe not have to worry like, oh, I spent $40 for that like character model, like and feel weird about maybe ruining it.
Yeah,
Well,
when
you,
I was painting 3 years ago, I was just buying Reaper Bones miniatures because they're like $2 or $3 a piece. And then if I didn't do a good job of it, I didn't feel bad about it.
Right.
yeah,
Hey, there's Sackboy
yeah. So that's
from.
cool. That's cool. I don't know. Yeah. So one of the goals I have for this year, which I don't know if I probably haven't really talked about it, is to try and start doing some digital sculpting and stuff. And so we'll see maybe if that actually goes somewhere. Um, trying to get in a little more into like 3D printing or something like that could be kind of a neat thing to experiment with.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Elon mentioned the printer that he has.
Okay, yeah. So man, they've gotten so much cheaper and better over the years. Like it's
Yeah, I feel a lot of people have been using the Anycubic, like the photon ones, or I've heard the name a lot. And I mean, yeah, for $300, I mean, certainly that's still pretty expensive, but in the context of this miniature hobby where, like, I don't know, like that Sister of Battle special character was like $130, like, it's not.
yeah, it's not. Well, I mean,
If
and
you,
even just like if you buying like a nicer inkjet printer, like they're still expensive too, really. But like, who's doing that now? I mean,
Yeah,
but
that's not expensive for that same. Like instead of buying a PlayStation 4, you could buy that.
I don't even know how much PlayStations cost now.
I think they're like $250, but I don't even know.
No, yeah,
Still,
that
for
looks
the
fine.
amount of fun you'd get out of this, that you'd be making
yeah,
terrain or
yes,
figures
yes,
or anything. I mean, it costs nothing basically for the fun
yeah.
factor.
I guess I don't know how much the resin itself costs and how much is used per print, but
Yeah, I mean
Yeah, and
that's
I don't know.
certainly
I
something to
think,
consider. But
I'm sure eventually we'll get one in some capacity. Particularly, yeah, like I mean, the prices are only going down, so yeah. But no, it's cool to. I mean, it's cool to hear of other people getting them and experimenting with them. And I feel because of all this, so many people are using them. It has to be a lot easier to find like information and like troubleshooting information and such to kind of help you along with them. And it's becoming just a lot more probably user friendly than maybe it had been like even 2 years ago.
yeah,
well, so I guess now maybe we're at the point where we could try to start the podcast and not feel bad.
Yeah, I feel we could do that. We could do that. I mean, I guess if people are ready, I can just go into it. I think this seems like this is episode 70.
well,
Yeah,
Congrats.
yeah. It's hard to believe that. Well, yeah. So does everyone think they're ready, and I can just do
we're
the
ready.
general introduction.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Hey everybody, and welcome to Dragged into Turbolasers. This is a Between the Bolter and Me podcast. This is episode 70, and I'm your host, Eric Wire, and I'm here tonight with my two brothers, Adam Wire,
Hey everybody.
Greg Wire,
Hey everyone.
and I'm also really excited to have our friend Dave on here as well, who people may know on Instagram by Unsupervised Darkness, or he also has another kind of handle on Instagram called like Dave by Dave or Dave X Dave, where he has a lot of his cool art and whatnot. But yeah, hey Dave, nice to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's really nice to have you on here. And I guess if people have watched some of our streams and such in the past, Dave has kind of been a regular person on there and such. And we've been following some of like his artwork and more recently some of his the models and stuff that he's created. And we thought it would be fun to have him on an episode of the podcast here to kind of talk to him about some of his art and how he's kind of got involved in sort of this miniature hobby and kind of how those sorts of two things intersect, and yeah, just sort of his journey as a hobbyist and artist and that sort of thing. But I guess with that, maybe we can just sort of uh, get get right into it. And would you be able to tell us kind of a little bit about yourself and like kind of some of the art you do and then how that sort of led into this miniature hobby?
Sure. I've been making models since I was a kid, just cars and typical teen building stuff, and then later on, I had a career as an illustrator for a number of years at a Detroit studio that catered more to advertising and the car industry, and all the avenues that led to, so to speak. Um, and then got into greeting cards and working for toy companies like Mattel Toys and Galoob Toys, who did micro machines and
Oh, micro machines. I loved micro
And
machines.
Z-bots. Z-bots.
Z-Bots, yeah,
Hell
yeah,
yeah.
That
That's
brings me
great.
back.
and all the the Action Fleet Star Wars
Yep.
toys and stuff like that. So it was really amazing to be able to be a part of all that, and all the talented people that kind of put all those prototypes and things together. So I got to see everything from resin model prototypes being made to painted and shown at
Mm-hmm.
toy fair and stuff like that. So it was always just a pleasure.
So that in general is interesting. Like I imagine like how all of that is was done back then is probably just so different than like what is done now for like making the different models and prototypes and whatnot.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, back when I was working at Mattel, it was basically all done by hand sculpts and
Mm-hmm.
then cast in resin. First in clay, then a wax
Yeah.
mold was made, and they fine detailed that, and then from that was another resin, and then that went to a painter and cleaned up and made into a doll to go to toy fair, and then
Yeah, that's
and then
cool.
that same paint master goes to China to
Mm-hmm.
be made into the actual product. So I got to see it all from the very beginning, and
Mm-hmm.
work with some amazing people and projects like redesigning Hot Wheels packaging and Nickelodeon stuff. There was all kinds of stuff that I worked on. It was
That's
great.
cool. That's awesome.
Do you have
Yeah.
a favorite thing that you worked on while you were with them, or?
Uh, well, my first package was Tony the Tattooed Man, and you'd probably have to do a search to find it because uh, it was he was
Oh, I think I found him.
yeah, he's
Oh shit! Look at
that,
that.
yeah. So that
That's
was
cool.
my first package that I designed and had illustrated and everything. Yeah.
Oh, and is that a toy that you would put on like temporary tattoos and stuff?
Yeah, so it came
Huh.
with that little green applicator, which had a sponge tip on it that moistened the tattoo
Yeah.
onto Tony, and you could put them on yourself. So you could tattoo him, tattoo you.
That's cool.
That's fun.
Possibilities are endless.
Yeah, yeah. So the marketing aspect of this was tough because it was going up against a like a 36-inch stuffed Hulk Hogan doll.
Oh.
So it had to compete. So I made Tony's face bigger than the doll's, the Hulk Hogan's thing. So imagine a wall of these angry faces looking
Mm-hmm.
out at you from the toy shelf. So it was,
Well, if only Tony looked like Henry Rollins and, and the amount that you would have sold,
sure.
you could put on tattoos on Henry Rollins, search and destroy on his back.
Right.
That's great. That's cool.
Well, throughout, like when you were kind of working at Mattel and some of these things, like during that time, did you kind of do some of your own art and stuff as well?
Yeah, there was times that I would do just my own models. I would still go for 3D. I'd sculpt my own pieces, and just paint them up and things. So it was nothing like miniatures that
Mm-hmm.
really I was just blown away. At first, I was like seeing them on Instagram and how they look giant. They're so well painted, and the talent that goes into these things is just obnoxiously brilliant. And so, uh, yeah, these are more of my sculptures that are being shown here. This is
I
more
like
of
the catfish a lot.
the
Oh,
toys that I made.
there's the bird with the guitar.
Um, yeah, so those, and just seeing the actual, then going to a hobby store to kind of check it out and seeing how small these things are, I was just like blown away. It made the talent level go right through the roof for me. I was just like, I'm not worthy.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know every time, like, even like I guess, even some of the models that like I've built and painted and stuff, like most of the time if I ever look at them, it's on like the internet or Instagram or something, and like I still sometimes surprise myself going back and looking at them like, wow, these are a lot smaller than I remembered. And like I think just in general, it's hard to appreciate a lot of what goes into it unless you actually see the real things in like person and stuff. So like I feel a lot that can be gained from looking at the stuff in person, really.
Well, I think in art in general, sculptures are cool because like the scale is such a major element of them, and like the textures on them and all the materials used are such like a major element to like kind of
Mm-hmm.
how you experience it. And seeing pictures of it often doesn't convey a lot of that. Like you were saying, Dave, about seeing on Instagram all these models and seeing they're in fact actually really tiny, or like other types of like more like artist sculptures and such, like how much larger or smaller, like all those scales are so vary so dramatically based on kind of what the artist and stuff was maybe trying to convey. And I think that's a neat element that, and just in sculptures in general, that you don't necessarily always get from just a photo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so like you like yeah, on your Dave X Dave thing, you have lots of cool like watercolors, other like paintings and stuff, as well as a bunch of like different sculptures and whatnot. Are they from like more like recent developments? Is that from like a portfolio you've put together over the years? Like,
Yeah, they're more just pieces that I've had in different gallery shows, uh, back when I used to do that kind of work. And they're I was pretty successful as far as selling my work and having a following and things. And I just then found Instagram and thought, okay, I'll start putting up some of my
mm-hmm,
older stuff, and this had become my new website kind of thing. So there was a little bit more viewable, having
mm-hmm.
people be able to view it and comment and like it or not like it, so.
Yeah, no, it's certainly Instagram has made, in some sense, like we've talked about it before, but like blogs and stuff somewhat obsolete considering how much more accessible and like easy it is to do, and like people are actually on there a lot, which is like you can connect with people and that sort of thing. So like I feel it's a good platform for like content creators.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Yeah.
you have a lot of awesome crows
I love the
Thanks.
and
crows.
rabbits.
I like the crows the best.
There's this little one of three of them sitting on three crows sitting on a branch, like drinking coffee. Love it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, they're great. It seems like you could do some cool stuff for like Age of Sigmar, or like Age of Sigmar 28 with some creepy like crow like beings
Mhm.
True.
that I would love.
So actually, Dave, so while you were doing all these sculptures and stuff and working for Mattel and whatnot, was like Games Workshop's Warhammer stuff, was that something you were aware of at the time? Or when did
That
you first become aware of like the miniature wargaming hobby, at least knowing of it, whether you played it or not?
I I would say May, maybe in May of
Okay, yeah. So
last
it's
year.
like that's
So
that's
very, very
incredible.
recent.
That's
Yeah,
incredible.
and I that's when I got the Hellboy board game.
Yeah,
Mhm.
was that one of the things that kind of spurred you on to looking into kind of that miniature stuff because of that?
Yeah, because I just kind of started research. I'm heavy into researching things and having a
Mhm.
reason for, uh, it's like, what is this world that this character lives in? Like, and I saw the content and the stories behind Warhammer, and I was like, what is going on here? This is cool. And then the scale just blew me away as how detailed these little guys were, and
Mhm.
but I still, it's such a vast world that I still don't have my mind wrapped around the whole thing. But
Yeah.
I love the Necromunda um, Underhive kind of. It's kind of like Fifth Element and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blade Runner tied together. You know,
Nah,
um,
it's certainly true.
the
Well,
thing
yeah,
that I'm not too into in the Games Workshop stuff is just it's almost too detailed, too much. It's over the top. Everything's up to 11. It's not. There isn't any subtlety about it, and I think that's part of the scale. And we're always
No.
mhm.
talk,
Yeah,
you know,
I agree.
and we're talking about like the legs and the feet being big, and I think it's the proportion and everything is just because out of the gameplay that you've got a bunch of big thumbs and fingers coming down and moving those things around, that they've got to be pretty sturdy little guys
Well, no, I
to
mean
do
it's
that.
true, and like I mean over the years, like they've really started to change a lot of that. Like if you look at some of the older miniatures, like their swords and stuff, like now, and the plastic swords and stuff are very, very thin. And I think it's sort of, yeah, depends on, like, they're obviously marketing a lot of the stuff as their pieces to be used to play games and stuff. So, like, that itself is sort of inherently different, like, what they're trying to create. They have different parameters and guidelines they're trying to fulfill. And so, like, other people like us, like, a lot of the stuff that we're making, like, maybe they'll be used in a game, like, once, if at all. So, like, some of those things don't
But even
necessarily
still,
matter as
with some
much.
of Games Workshop's newer stuff, like with the Age of Sigmar Warcry models, lots of them are like really big and crazy poses with like thin whips that are like very,
Yeah.
very easy to break.
No,
So
I mean
Right.
they've gone to the extremes. Like a lot of, yeah, as you said, the Warcry models have really thin spears and chains and stuff that, like, you almost just look at them and they're broken. Um,
Mhm.
and I feel so for Games Workshop, Of all their sculptors, my favorite sculptor is has always been Brian Nelson, and he, I think, is always very good at kind of sort of like drawing a line between like simplicity and complexity, and like a lot of the sculpts and stuff he does, like there's always a lot of detail and stuff in them, but the balance of that is often a lot better. And oftentimes the models sort of come across as looking pretty simple compared to like some of the other ones. But like he has a great sense of like composure and how to kind of like achieve like a general feeling or something. So let's see if we can try and find some of his
Well,
models.
because I think, yeah, as you're saying, Dave, yeah, as like the models, sometimes they just try to cram too much detail and stuff on there that they can sometimes can look a little cluttered. It's almost just like, oh, we want this to look cool. Like we want to impress people with like their ability to sculpt or create these models, and it kind of maybe doesn't necessarily add that much to them.
Right. I
Well, and
mean,
I think
oh, go
too,
ahead.
or sorry, but I think too, like also now that there's so much 3D printing and stuff, since you're designing it on a computer, you can make stuff super fine, but that doesn't necessarily mean it will actually like print well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is that it's got to stand on its own kind of a thing with a base. You know, the
Hmm.
balance has to be right and stuff. And I think that Game Workshop has a lot of animation to their sculpts. It's just like, and I think that, you know, just listening to the podcast and YouTube here is that the feeling I get is that I'm all for the realism of the figures and how does that really relate to the gameplay and what is this world that they live in, and you know, are
Mm-hmm.
they really taking all this stuff off to use the restroom kind of a
Yeah.
thing, to, you know, and to to just put it into more of a realistic realm of how are these guys really performing and moving, until I did see, which was kind of a revelation for me, was a video or from a game. I guess there was a video game of 40K.
Oh, like Dawn of War and like Space Marine. They've made a bunch of video games over the years.
Right. Yeah. So I was just wondering, that kind of answered a lot of questions as far as like visualizing how these guys would move and
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
be in that world and with the jetpacks on and how they fly
Well, I
around and not
mean,
burn to themselves to
yeah.
death, you know.
Also, it's often interesting. Like, I mean, it's hard. Like, if you go and like look at like Space Marines and stuff and Space Marine armor, for instance, like oftentimes like a lot of the different armor designs will often they kind of look right in just that single static pose that you have. But then as you think more about it, like now, if they were actually like moving around, could they really do that? Could they actually like shoulder their weapon? Could they like, and so like there's a lot of stuff that you kind of just don't think about. And like I know like a lot of the even like the newer Necromunda models, like some of their like armor and stuff where like their thaw is like attached to their like waist and stuff. Some of the placement of the like armor plating is just so weird to the point where like they probably really couldn't move around in it. And like for the most part, and just like a passing glance at it, it's like, oh, that looks great. Like, yeah, but yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that you could consider and think about, and I feel oftentimes it's just kind of like what you as like an artist really want to do with whatever you're working on. Like if that's important to you, great. If it's not, like that's fine too, really.
It took the three of us 15 years to realize that regular Space Marines have really wonky anatomy.
Somehow.
Sure, we realized that the Terminators had wonky anatomy and that their shoulders were at their ears, but somehow it took us years to realize it. You know what? These regular Space Marines don't have abdomens, and now it's all we talk about.
It's
Yeah, we're
true.
talking about it again.
Well, sorry. The thing is that I see that point of view, but at the same time, they're so small that they look great at 5 feet away from you or whatever the metric is for that. But so and you can identify everybody, and then, but I'd still like to understand the whole rim lighting everything and outlining things. And I think that it's like to show off the GW sculpt, or is it to, I don't know, just drive you crazy trying to.
Oh yeah, I think that is a good point because I think a lot of the newer models, I think they're always well painted, like on the box art and such. But I feel oftentimes like it's like they have like a prompt that they want to like do this the finest edge highlighting on everything, and like sometimes choosing like color schemes that maybe aren't even that flattering, but like they really show off like look at all this chainmail and look at all these little fuses and all this stuff just so like you're certain that you see all this stuff that's in there, whereas like then the moment you see someone paint them like maybe say convert something or paint it for like an ink 28 like setting and it's painted like a little bit darker and they don't do quite all of that, like it often, at least in my view, ends up looking a little bit better because they're not like like accenting every little tiny thing that you
Well,
wouldn't
yeah,
really
and I
be
mean,
able to
I
see.
feel like for most of the time, like if you have like a model, like there are certain areas that you want to try and draw the viewer's attention to, and so like you
Sure.
don't necessarily always have to. You might spend more time painting like the face or whatever, such that that's kind of where you're drawn into, and so like you don't. So yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of things to consider and think about, and um, yeah, it's interesting.
But I really love, some of my heroes on Instagram are the guys that really take it to an extreme as far as realism goes, and having all the textures and patinas and just the
Mm-hmm.
wear and tear of real battle kind of gear. It's kind of like going back to, like, I remember, like, okay, here's Star Trek and all the Trek stories and space, and everything was so clean and
Hmm.
spotless and everything. And then Star Wars came along, and I was
Yep.
just like, the Rebel Alliance. It's like, you know, don't they have a power washer or something?
Yeah.
It's like.
No.
So I really appreciate, I just found a fellow that you might know. It's he goes by Eryky, Erykyey. You can call him up, and he does
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
amazing detail. I mean, there's the real broken fingers, there's dark
Hmm.
tech,
Hmm.
there's,
Yeah.
totally
There's.
not panicking. All those guys are doing like super creative kit bashes and conversions that are just crazy. But I mean, some of these things are just like, those are not miniatures, those are like full size dudes.
No, yeah, like the amount of like attention to detail and like weathering and like OSL and all these different things to just like make it look like real is pretty
I mean,
incredible.
yeah, he free-handed that shield. I mean,
Yeah. This
that's
little
just,
owl. It's
you
awesome.
know, that's so cool. and then on top of it, there's all the edge, distress, patina and everything that's on there. So it's just really wonderful. This is art to me. I mean, these are miniature paintings and stuff like that, and um,
Yeah, I think that like it's like I think for everything about this hobby, like it is such a diverse hobby that it can be like you like literally you want to put these together as gaming pieces just to play a particular game, or it can be something like you want to be able to like more as like an art form, and you want to kind of express yourself, do all these conversions and experiment with painting styles and like weathering and all these things to convey sort of a mood or an idea and things, such that I feel it's certainly a kind of a continuum between like whether it's just like a hobby or like going towards more of like an art form. And I think that's kind of is interesting how it like this miniature hobby can kind of encapsulate all that stuff.
yeah, that's what also kind of turned me on to the whole aspect of it, is that there's something to do with these once you've paint them.
Mm-hmm.
You can play a game with them. You can create stories around them. There's a whole world that is available. It's like, Mordheim, uh, seems to be even based on one thing, but it's been elevated into this other subculture that's not even supported anymore, but except for by fans. And it's how I, found Anna's work. And just, I was just kind of like all the terrain and everything that people were putting together, just was so fantastic. And my father was into doing miniature buildings and miniature railroad buildings and stuff like that, and creating little storylines around little villages that he'd put together. And so I was kind of into that, but he was so way better than I was at at actually doing. I mean, we'd go back and forth and riff off of each other, but he just had a sense of, and I think it was just that he had been doing it for longer than me and knew what to do.
Yeah, you could do it if you said
Yeah.
you wanted to.
Yeah.
And I feel just the longer you're doing anything, like I know, like we've been making models and painting stuff for, I don't even know how long now, like 15, 20 years or something.
Yeah. It's certainly over 20.
Yeah, like we'll say 20 just to make it easy. But it's like, so like certainly my goals and like what I was trying to achieve and interested in have changed so much over the years. So, and I think it's, in that sense, it's kind of neat that there is a lot of room for essentially anyone coming into it to like essentially really do whatever you want with it, whether you're trying to play like the game or you're using it as a way to like express yourself as kind of like an art form. I certainly very much value that.
I guess I think it's kind of neat that you mentioned that like uh that the Mantic's Hellboy game and maybe even like Hate and some of these Kickstarter like board games and like is actually like kind of been an avenue for people to kind of get in the miniature like wargaming like and converting hobby and such. And I think that is something that probably a lot of people are now kind of getting exposed to it because of that. And I think that's kind of a neat thing to hear.
Yeah, I think that it's such a value. I mean, admittedly, I had extreme sticker shock at the price of everything.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's like, because I started out with like Hellboy, and that was I think $170 at a comic store that I bought it
Mm-hmm.
at. And a buddy of mine turned it on. He's like totally into board games, like
Yeah.
nuts. Cody, thank you for getting me into this, But it so spending $175 on a board game that comes with everything that you need, and then you
Yeah.
paint the figures, you get hours of pleasure out of painting the figures. And then you go to Games Workshop and it's like $35 for 10 guys, or $40, or $35 for one guy, depending on the detail.
Yeah. It can be hard to.
They're not assembled. You don't have the rules or like the capacity to
Right.
play anything. Yeah, so it's something.
Yeah. But I
It's
mean, they're it's cool, and I think that's what's appealing to me, is like seeing what everybody's doing with the kits. It comes with so much extra
Mm-hmm.
stuff. As far as a single kit comes with, yeah, 10 guys, but then you've got all these extra parts that you can customize each guy. It's not, having,
mm-hmm.
like a box of army men or something like that. They're really interesting, cool figures.
Yeah,
Um,
no, certainly. Well, I guess with your kind of experience in like the like creating toys and such and doing like your own sculptures and painting and whatnot, like how does that kind of influence your like your more recent work on models and such, and like how does that sort of translate into those things? And now that you start, assemble and paint some of these models that are, as you kind of mentioned, so small, like yeah, like how do those all kind of equate together?
I think it just took me a while to get used to the scale, because I was always really into the scale aspect of it, and having, um, like on the hate stuff, I was surprised that the larger, like 50 millimeter
Mm-hmm.
figures that you see in the uh,
Instagram.
on my Instagram, yeah, it the little skulls are the same size as the 8 mil or the 28 millimeter guys, so it's like really kind of completes the scale aspect of
Mm-hmm.
it. A lot of these things, like the scale's all out of whack as far as, and we've talked about that on other episodes of your show,
Mm-hmm.
is just having giant robots that are destroying all these guys, and they're way out of scale. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That only somewhat related was one of the things. So Fantasy Flight Games released a miniature game like with X-wings and TIE fighters, so a Star Wars miniature game. And like
Mm-hmm.
maybe the most appealing thing about that game to me was that they made sure everything was scaled properly.
Yeah, to
yeah,
one
and
another.
once you
Yeah.
have the scale down, it's you just can run with it, and you're relating to the paint jobs, relate to each other. The rust, corrosion, and all that kind of stuff all goes together. um, and the dioramas, I mean, some of these guys are putting the same, like grass that looks normal on a giant robot, for the diorama, and then they put it next to the figure, and it's like it should be up to his waist,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everything's kind of not in scale, and it's just a pet peeve.
Yeah, I feel GW has certainly gotten a little bit better with some of their scaled stuff and keeping stuff consistent. But then again, like their Necromunda stuff, since it's a specialist game, isn't always the
It's so
same.
different. They're so
And
different.
I guess the fact that they've been creating them for like 30 years and different people sculpt them, different design teams, like
Mm-hmm.
it's changed so much over the years that like it's all out of whack, even with the more of a concerted effort.
Yeah.
But When like painting some of the miniatures and such, like what sort of paints have you started to use, and have you considered using any of like the other paints you've used for some of your other miniatures or like paintings and stuff in like a miniature
Yeah,
context?
yeah. So I use primarily scale 75 um, is my kind of go-to because it's so matte, and I love the
Hmm.
just the matteness. And I was watching some videos, and people were saying it's not easy to use, and you might not like it. And I'm like, seems fine to me. And
Yeah.
and those I have to mail order
Yeah, that.
uh, or buy online, which
Yeah.
and but I started out with Vallejo just because the game hobby shop that um, I would have access to, that's what they sell. Um, and so between those two, and then I bought a few tubes of this oil paint, which none of us can
Like
pronounce.
up Tylung or something like they're it's a German company, right?
Well,
Or I think it's German.
Or it looks like it should be based on
there's
the name.
it's Spain. Actually, I think these are affiliated with Scale 75.
Oh, really? Okay. Huh.
Might be the same company.
Interesting.
It's a
If
German.
you're listening, just do a search for an oil paint as 502 for modeling oil paint. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like up tiling 502. Yeah, like I feel they're. I think a lot they're maybe they're at least somewhat popular for like scale modeling and tanks and things like that. But like
Yeah.
they're it's like an oil paint, so they're certainly very applicable to like our sort of like space marines and whatnot. Um, I've heard. I mean, admittedly, I haven't really worked too much with oil paints of any capacity, but I've heard the Abteilung paints have like the pigment grind is like really fine, and that is one nice aspect of them, and that maybe they don't have as much like linseed oil that's often in like kind of canvas sort of oil paints,
Yeah.
but
Mm-hmm.
having
Mm-hmm.
not really worked with them or more traditional um, oil paints for like canvas painting, I can't really speak to that.
Yeah. So they're also uh, supposed to be low in the linseed oil. They have high pigment color content to low
Mm-hmm.
oil content.
So
Mm,
they
And
probably
okay.
dry faster.
yeah, they dry faster. You use white them, so
Yeah.
you can paint them right over, like base coat everything like you
Yeah.
normally would
With
with
acrylics. Yeah.
acrylics. Yeah, and then uh, I have to try this. Is that then you can put on your like a varnish, like a matte
Mm-hmm.
varnish, and
Mm-hmm.
then um, go back over it with more oil paint, or you can go back over it with acrylics once it's dried.
Yeah, so like I've used the oils and stuff that I've used. Um, I've primarily used them for like weathering and stuff because, and like I've talked about, I think this before on other streams and podcasts and stuff. But it's nice like once you apply like a little of it with an oil, then you can go back with like one of the thinners or whatnot, and it's much easier to control and remove like unwanted paint. Like if you're trying to paint using like acrylics and stuff, like once you've painted over something, like if you add too much paint, like getting that off is almost impossible. But with the oils, like you have a longer window where you can easily remove and create like transitions of colors and stuff with them a lot easier. So they're great for that. And thus far I've not really tried to like use them as like the sole painting, like the sole paint to paint a model. But I mean that could be interesting too.
Yeah, I was hoping to try doing that also, but I'm totally into the weathering and using pigments, and I think
Mm-hmm.
Wartsvania just mentioned that they make some great pigments. Um, so I'm into those, but another paint company that I've been using is AK Interactive.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, they make a lot of that stuff as well.
Yeah, they make some amazing ready right out of the tube
Mm-hmm.
kind of weathering stuff that's just fantastic.
Yeah, they have a lot of nice like enamels and such, like which almost they seem basically like just like the oil paints, but they're all, almost like just pre-thinned, and you can
Mm-hmm.
still apply them and then use like white spirits or like odorless thinner to like kind of work with them more and like thin them and do better like transitions and whatnot.
Well, so this
Right.
is like getting back to something you mentioned earlier. You said like the scale 75 paints were some of the initial ones that you were going to and using. And I know for me, like I've over the past maybe 2 or 3 years, I've started to use a lot of their paints as well, and I also really like them, mainly because of as you said how matte they are. And I know like when I first started painting, um, it was all painting Warhammer 40,000 models, and so at the time really the only paints and stuff I used were Games Workshop paints, and back then, which was around like the second edition of the game, so a long time ago, they they had a lot of what they called like washes and like chestnut ink and like other stuff like that. And I remember one of the things that I always struggled with was like kind of trying to remove all the shine that all the paints had. Eli says the word Abteilung is German for department or division. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, 'cause it's clearly like a German word with like the EI, so the I sound.
Yeah.
But
But
I
yeah,
don't
so
know
like
my
I
German.
remember like and even like for years like what I almost wanted most out of any paint was for it to be matte. Like I like almost despise like so much of the stuff like so many of like the paints and other stuff like I'd be using, they all have more of a sheen and a shine to them that like was never really what I was like looking for. And like I've tried like there are lots of things like different companies make like matte mediums and stuff that you can mix into your paints, and then you can add other like matte varnishes and stuff to help. And um it really needs to be said the scale, like the scale 75 scale color paints are so much more matte to begin with than a lot of the other like paint ranges and stuff. So if that's something that it interests you, like they're very much worth looking into. um
Yeah, I feel I would much prefer something to just be matte to begin with, and if I want to add like a shine to it, like a satin or like a gloss, like I feel I can add that later. But uh,
yeah.
yeah,
And something that I've discovered is that if you want to add a bit of a sheen to something, is you can mix like a null oil or one of the Citadel
Shades and stuff.
shade, more of their washes, like null
Mm-hmm.
oil or um, if you mix a little bit of that into it, it'll add a little kind of a
Mm.
satin finish to the what you're putting down.
yeah, yeah. Well, they even have a gloss version of most of their shades.
Yeah,
that I guess
exactly.
is
Yeah.
even more like shiny. But I've certainly found that working with all the GW shades, if you don't shake them up enough, which admittedly, even their contrast paints are like this, they have some like medium or something in there to help like make it such that it is a little bit more matte. And if you don't shake them up like the contrast paints of the shades, you can often get pretty variable results in which like
Mm-hmm.
they'll be super shiny or not.
Yeah. Right.
So I feel it's something you have to be careful
I
with.
fell into that one. Yeah.
Which admittedly, the Sister of Battle that I've been painting and such, like the red is kind of shiny, and I think it looks like kind of nice for their armor because it has like almost like a slight lacquered look to it.
Yeah.
But in most, in a lot of circumstances, if it wasn't supposed to be like that, I wouldn't like it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just not the effect that you might be looking for.
And I
Yeah, well,
mean, you
so
can certainly tone it down, but it can be hard.
Wartsylvania just wrote. We might have just convinced him to buy
their paint,
the
right?
the whole paint range. Yeah, that was my dream, and then I was like too worried that I was gonna be like, this isn't for me, and I'm just spent $300 on the 65 paint set. Yeah, but since then I've already probably surpassed that by buying
The individual
individual.
ones. Well, yeah, so that I guess sort of brings up like another thing with like paints. Like more recently, like I've probably over the past 2 or so years, I really like just buying like different, like all the different companies like Scale 75, Vallejo, and whatnot. They just have different paint sets for painting different things like wood and leather or like gold or
The whole black
silver.
and white paint set.
Yeah, like a black and white paint set. And I sort of really like those because like if you get like one for like vegetation or something, like there are a whole range of different greens with like different hues and maybe some browns and stuff. And it's a good way to kind of get like a good starting point or a base to like play around with different colors and shades, because I know like I feel when I first started painting, one of the things was it's like, oh, I need to paint this green. And then you'd go to the hobby shop and it's like, okay, well, this green looks okay. And you'd buy like two green paints and you'd get back and you'd start painting with them. And it's like, you know what? This really isn't even close to what I was wanting or what I think I wanted. So, like, I often find, like, if I'm just at a shop trying to buy, like, random paints, invariably like never get what I actually want. And a lot of the
Yeah.
different paint sets kind of help circumvent that a little. And they also, since they're curated by other like artists and stuff, like that kind of just in general helps. So
Yeah, a lot of the Vallejo ones will have like a little pamphlet that will kind of talk about like how they painted a particular thing and like the different combinations of the different paints in the set or how they diluted them and this and that, which can
like
be pretty
yeah.
helpful.
So Scale 75 has like a black and white paint set, which I think Vallejo has them as well. And that was one of the ones I was most interested in because um, just painting both blacks and whites in general can be pretty hard. And there's just like a huge range in like what you could use to get a black or like a white effect. And it's certainly very interesting. Like if you get the black paint from Scale 75 and paint a little of that on like a palette or something, and then just pull out all your other blacks from like Games Workshop, from Vallejo, one of the many Vallejo blacks they make, and they're just all very, very different. And then if you pull out like, what's it called? Black 2.0 or Black
Stewart
3.0.
sample or
Yeah,
whatever
his
his
like
name is. His
ultra black paint Like, and just if you compare all of them, they're just all so different, and they can really like. You could really use a lot of that to kind of create interesting effects, and I don't know. It's just I think it's fun to experiment with, and I know like sort of one of the common things like you just hear all the time, like man, like black's super hard to paint well, and like I for the most part I would agree with that. Um, and so in many regards, I almost think you could probably do a pretty good job of painting like a black model by just getting all of the different black paints you can find from different ranges and combining them together. You could probably make that work.
Yeah, there. The thing with blacks is even in like fine art painting and things, there's a lamp black, a Mars
Mm-hmm.
black, jet black. So just in those threes, you've got different tones and intensities, and
Mm-hmm.
one's cool, one's warm, one's just neutral black.
Mm-hmm.
But really, nothing. It's if you're looking at it as you look at a black object, it's reflecting so much, even if it's matte, is
Yeah.
reflecting the light. So you're only using it in bits and pieces, or even just to tone down other colors to make it appear to be black.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
using it straight black is really it is difficult because it's lacking any kind of character. So I
Mm-hmm.
think
Mm-hmm.
that's what a lot of the pro painters, or the guys that are into experimenting, is just pushing that kind of a thing. It's like use the color of the room, the highlights, and it's a whole
Mm-hmm.
light theory kind of a thing. So you're bringing that aspect into it, opposed to um, trying to add black shadows in. You should be adding light. Start dark and lighten up.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, so that
From
was so.
your
Well, I guess related to that, for a long time, like how I painted everything, literally everything, it was always, I started with black, it was always black, and then would highlight up from that to whatever color I'd want to do, like always. Um, and like I feel that in itself, yeah, can kind of create some interesting like effects and ideas and stuff. I mean, you have to be careful if you do that, like, you might never like achieve the overall color you were trying to achieve because too much of whatever you were painting is too dark. So like there's a lot to kind of work with and play with really, but
uh,
yeah, there's I mean, if you're painting, wanting to go to, like if you were painting the sisters in their white, say it white armor,
mhm.
you could prime it in a gray,
Yeah.
and then work work in some of the shadows first, kind of sketching it in as far as lights and darks,
Mhm.
and then go from there as far as how you're going to be creating it. But you know where your shadows are going to be right off the bat. It's kind of like the zenithal, or
Mhm.
mm-hmm.
Like
zenith,
highlighting and stuff.
the
Yeah.
highlight when you're painting. You can do that with a rattle can or an airbrush,
Yeah.
and it's it's a good starting point because it's kind of, you've got your shadows already put in there. You don't have to go back in, and then you can just start right on top of that,
Mhm.
um, adding in your colors. So it's pretty, every figure that I do, every mini, it's always a learning experience for me because it's just so new, and I really just have to remind myself to just push it. Don't, what would happen if I did this color?
Mhm.
with this
Yeah.
color. It's like I'm not using any kind of a guide for any of the stuff that I'm painting. It's just kind of like, seeing other people's work, and it's, of course, I'm not like having that on my computer while I'm painting or anything like that. It's more like just registered in your brain, and then go from there, and you then create your own look and
Yeah.
style.
Yeah. Very much so. Yeah. Actually, Ward Sylvania asked if there are any scale 75 paint sets that we'd recommend. So, both of their metallic ones are pretty good. They have one for gold and one for silver. And the best thing about those two sets is just they have an extreme range of darks, like dark and light, like golds and silvers and coppers and like other different colors. So like they're great. More recently, as I was talking about this, like the black and white paint set that Scale 75 makes, I really like that because it's sort of like it like they have a pretty big range of like grays and browns and whites and stuff, and like all of those you can kind of like force you to realize that you can create whites and blacks with like a pretty big range of colors just based on how you do them. So those are the main ones that I've used a lot. But in many regards, I feel like if there's something that you're going to be painting, like there are going to be a lot of like browns or whatnot or greens, or like I would just buy whatever, like a set of whatever color that was. Just because it'll kind of force you and see like, oh, you know what, there's a whole range of like colors and hues and stuff that you could play around with. Okay, so you already have their metallics. Yeah, they're good. They're nice.
Yeah, I haven't tried their metallics. I'm trying to wean myself off of metallics, because the hate figures are basically all just chain and shields and armor. So I'm trying to think of it in a different way of maybe painting these all matte and using different color combinations, and then leading that into having a little bit of metallic on like the edges where the paint's chipped off, or that the patina's been rubbed off because it's been battered with a hammer or something like that. But with the scale color, you get eight different colors per set. So my recommendation is that you get a color range that you want. Like Adam was saying, that the non-metallic paint sets are really nice because they have a lot of darks to lights.
Yeah.
And that way, and you can use them. I mean, I use primarily like even for flashes, like this gray color, and you mix a little bit of green in there, and it surprisingly makes a great flash for like kind of semi-undead or unhealthy skin, which seems to work great on any Games Workshop figures, or like these hate figures are crazy. But back to blacks, another thing you could do is put down a black and then use like a Games Workshop Citadel wash over it, like a null oil, or they've got blues and greens and all these other things, and that would tone it down so it actually creates kind of a sheen over it, and gives like any black can become a metallic look to it.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's all about experimenting the shit out of, and just trying stuff just out of the blue and say, yeah, that looks great, or I'm not gonna do that one again. It's
Yeah.
like anything else, it's like food.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you put ketchup on a hot dog just for the kicks.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, I guess maybe we've been at this for a little while. Maybe we could wrap it up soon and kind of
Sure.
with that in mind, like, do you have like what do you think you're going to be working on next, Dave? Like, is there any series of particular models you're excited to kind of paint or work on, or something you're excited to try?
In that vein, did you paint the Hellboy models?
I started them.
Okay.
I haven't posted them because they were like the first things that I started painting.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that.
So, but yeah, I'll be posting those soon. I've done some. Let me. Got a box of them somewhere here. Sorry.
All sorts of stuff back there.
What's that?
You have all sorts of stuff back there. Like,
I do. Oh, here now.
No, it's the gorilla, the zombie, like gorilla dude or whatever you'd say.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, no, I think from what I recall, the Hellboy models were pretty cool looking.
Yeah. I think the light might be blowing it out, but
Yeah, I feel like and it's neat that they're more like akin to the like Mignola artwork and such.
right. They did a really nice job with the sculpts.
Oh,
Yeah, they look good.
or all like the BPRD members, like, did they make them too?
Yeah. So there's Liz Sherman and Abe and uh,
Kraus, or was that his name?
yeah, Klaus.
Was one Roger? What's the name
Yeah,
of
Roger. Yeah,
the
Roger.
ESP guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or one's like the homunculus.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
Roger.
That's
that's
Roger.
Roger and Lobster Johnson.
Yeah. So many cool characters.
Yeah. So there's a lot of.
Is there a Wendigo? Did they make them all of the Wendigo?
No, they've got Baba Yaga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On a big bill.
Yeah. So, yeah, those are. They're screaming to be painted with. But the thing, you guys kind of got me going on the GW Games Workshop figures, and just the kit bashing. That was so much fun doing that figure. I was just like blown away. The guy that's center on the screen right now.
Oh yeah, the Bone Reaper.
The Bone Reaper, yeah.
For some reason, Instagram's not. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but like I feel that's is certainly a fun aspect of the miniature hobby, in particular with Games Workshop, since they have such a wealth of models. There's a lot of freedom to do like kit bashes and whatnot to kind of like sort of explore stuff you're interested in.
Yeah.
So like that's always pretty nice.
Yeah. So I want to just to keep the interest going, there's like over a hundred hate figures.
Oh boy.
So
Have you read the graphic novel, the Hate graphic novel?
yeah, yeah,
Is it good?
yeah. It's minimal text. It's
Yeah.
mostly illustration. It's all black and white paintings, um, and so the game kind of falls short as far as the world that there's dragons and all kinds of architecture that isn't in the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's more just a straight up skirmish game.
Mm-hmm.
But the storyline is great. So when I'm painting those figures, I'm really thinking about the environment that they're living in.
Okay. Yeah.
Like that Grok, the guy with his arms out. He, he's not an indoor guy.
Yeah.
So he's going to be showing a lot of rust and wear and tear and dirt on his skin, and
Yeah.
so I try and just kind of think of him that way, opposed to just straight up, okay, this is this guy, this game figure, and this is his role there. I try and give him a little bit more character and put him, like rusted, and
Yeah,
some of
yeah,
these
yeah.
guys might be able to take care of their armor a little bit more, but
No, yeah, I think certainly putting that sort of thought and consideration into like the painting and such always helps convey an idea and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, so I think that's exciting.
even with these guys, there's limitations to the factory injection molding of these
Mhm.
things. So, just like seam lines and stuff are natural, you take those off. But then there's things like I added the chains and the skulls to this figure here, to Tundor. And so it's just kind of like taking these and customizing them and basing them,
Yeah.
and giving them, adding the story to them individually, so
No, that I think helps add a lot of life and character to the models.
yeah. And so those are Games Workshop skulls that I just
Okay.
used some green stuff and kind of followed how the other characters have some of them strung together like
Yeah.
that. And
That's cool.
Yeah, looks good. Looks really good.
this guy's kind of a sample room of armor. I think that he's collected a lot of armor off of a lot of dead enemies, and he's just, this works, and so he's not too thematic as far as colors go or anything like that. So
Yeah, well, now he looks good, and like I'm excited to see some like more of the models painted and some additional like the Hellboy stuff, and also maybe some more Games Workshop stuff.
yeah, I've got a couple Kickstarters coming. I just recently picked up Rising Sun as another Adrian Smith.
Yeah.
Those figures are just amazing also, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
Yeah, there's always
I hear
something.
that's a downfall.
It's
Yeah,
easy
now there's
to buy. It's a lot easier to buy more stuff than it is to do stuff with what you have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so-
I've got all the Anna's figures.
yeah.
My buddy sent me a full set of those, so
Yeah, they're great.
I've got. Oh, I did do the snail. I kind of worked on the snail a bit.
Oh yeah, her little snail was great.
Yeah, with the
Yeah, I
skull.
love that still.
Yeah. So I added the longer antennas and the little
Mm-hmm.
bits in there.
Feelers or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Now.
this thing is just the best. Isn't it?
Oh yeah, the Blood Fiend. Her
Yeah.
Blood Fiend. Yeah, I love that. I love that little guy.
So I just kind of base coated him. I haven't gotten into detailing him up yet. But,
Yeah, no, I painted one of them. It's fun.
yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe we should wrap this up then.
Yeah.
I did.
But yeah, I mean, it has been really nice having you on here and chatting about kind of your experience and like art and at Mattel and just coming into the miniature hobby. Like, it's always good to hear other people's perspective. And certainly, if anyone isn't following Dave, to give him a follow at unsupervised_darkness and Dave X Dave, which we'll put those in like the sort of the comments or the description below if you're not, but certainly.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. With that said, do you have any kind of final comments, Dave?
Just push it. Don't say this is done. It's never done. Just because you'll look back on it and say, I could have done this. You still can.
No,
So-
that's true.
and just experiment, with anything. It's like finding techniques on YouTube and you can make them your own. You don't have to follow them exactly because those guys just found it the same way that you're finding it.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah, I feel it's just constant. The whole thing is constantly a learning process. So like you can always improve and consider how to improve the next model, or maybe even improve one that you'd worked on previously. But yeah.
I mean, I'd love to take one of those to tour tutorials of like an actual live training of painting and stuff like that, just to see if there's anything that I can get out of it. But even then, that's that guy's technique, not
Yeah, no.
so you're taking it's like reading a book. You get part of the story, but then you read another book and it's like
Takes
Yeah.
stuff from everywhere. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, again, thanks so much for joining us. It was great talking with you. And
yeah.
maybe we can have you on again sometime. It'd be fun to kind of hear your progress and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'd love it. Yeah, thanks.
All right. Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks everybody for being here.
Over and out.
Night.
All right.
Excellent. We did it.
Yeah, so I guess
Alright.
maybe we can probably end the stream as well, because I guess it's
Yeah,
like
go to bed.
1 in the morning here. It's pretty
I
early.
started to try to get up at like 6-ish to get into work
That's
early.
rough.
Because of the coronavirus, they want the shift to try to be more separate. So they want all the first shift people to be gone quick as possible, such that they don't overlap at all with the second shift people,
Yeah.
which makes sense, but still means I'm getting about 5 hours of sleep.
Yikes.
That's rough.
Did everybody survive the Borg night?
Oh, yes. Yeah, they did. One of the characters had a squire, and the squire's arm, or was it a squire or like a court jester, I guess, rather.
Oh yeah, I was there.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
Dave.
and
But
then
I was
you were there
didn't
for
play it
that.
all we haven't played it all since then, Dave.
No, but I mean like just you physically.
Yeah.
The next day it went pretty late. So
Oh, yeah, we were all fine.
It was fine.
okay, cool.
Yeah. Well, I guess, yeah, alright, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's been fun chatting and talking about various different things. We'll talk to you again soon. Good luck, everybody. Keep safe with all the panic that's ensued from the whole like pandemic with the virus and all. Just stay safe.
Try to not go out as much, the social distancing thing, and maybe experiment with some models and some of those paints you've probably purchased and never opened.
Never used. Yeah, that's true. It's true.
This is a time for this hobby. That's for sure.
True. All right. Well, thanks everybody.
Yeah.
Night.
Talk to you again
Over
soon.
and out.